If you think about trying to make a 10-year-old king do his homework that he doesn't want to do, how far are you going to be able to push that? He is the king. He can't rule, but you don't want him 10 years further down the line to have a extraordinary hatred for you because you were the one that shoved him onto a horse and made him wear armor. Whereas Henry, who was the son of John of Gaunt, Richard's oldest and most powerful surviving uncle, once his father and grandfather had died, Henry was the heir to John of Gaunt's Duchy of Lancaster, and he was right in the middle of a very complex, formidable, bustling family. He had two extremely formidable older sisters. I think Philippa and Elizabeth would have knocked some rough edges off any little brother they might have
You
had.
say that they kept his ego in check, I think was the line you used.
That is my now. I can't prove that with a vignette because obviously I would have put it into the book if I could. But looking at who they grew up to be, Philippa ended up as Queen of Portugal, the mother of the golden generation of Portuguese monarchs. And Elizabeth was a fiery character in her own right, took after Richard's mother in picking and choosing her own husbands. I cannot see how their little brother could have got away with much. But John of Gaunt also then went on to marry again, have another daughter, but also develop a relationship with Catherine Swynford, who was governess to his children, who also had two children of her own before she'd been widowed, but had four more with Gaunt. So this is a packed nursery. And Henry is the only legitimate son and the heir to the dynasty, but he's also having to earn his place. And all of the Lancastrian children were able, intelligent, impressive people when they grew up. So I think we have to see this as a very constructive and positively challenging environment.
And when I was reading about how Richard was raised, it made me think a little bit, and pulling the Tudor side into how Henry VIII was raised after the death of Arthur in this cocoon of safety. And I wonder then when you see each of them, how they grew up and their views on legitimacy and people rebelling against them and all of that. Do you think there are similarities?
I do. I think there are very instructive comparisons to be made. I think they turned out slightly differently. Their characters were different, of course, but in Richard, you see a profound narcissism developing, I think, and I'm trying to show in the book, in which he is really the center of his own reality. And I'm not sure Richard, and of course that's difficult because a king, in a sense, should be the center of the reality that, he's in charge and God has put him there to be in charge. But it's the responsibilities thing that I'm not sure Richard ever saw anybody else, with the possible exception of his favorite Robert de Vere, as fully three-dimensional, fully real, with the same needs as he had. Now, in Richard's case, one of the ways that played out is that I don't think Richard ever liked to think about a future without himself at the center of it. And one of
Never
the
had
ways,
children, right?
that's it. That's what I was just going to go to. He married, first time Anne of Bohemia, a woman the same age as himself, but they didn't have children. And when she died, he married a 6-year-old girl who was the King of France's daughter, reinforced his sense of his own majesty and his own glory, but was very much putting off any sense of a future without him. Whereas Henry VIII, of course, obsessively focused on his legacy and how his legacy was going to play out. And of course, also obsessively focused on the woman he was spending his life with.